Hello and welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
Yeah, welcome everybody.
I
Nice
almost
to
couldn't
see
say
you.
it.
Is this my first review of the year?
First review of the year. It's the Popcorn Junkies' 6th movie review of the year.
I'm going to be doing a lot. I'm going to be doing a lot more.
A lot more this year, but also do follow us on Instagram because me and Nadia are going to be doing what we did about Saltburn. We're going to be doing about Priscilla, bizarrely another Jacob Elordi film where Nadia was going to reveal, or not reveal, we're going to have a more detailed chat about our very divergent assessments of the film Priscilla, the film about Priscilla Presley. Anyway, what is this? This is All of Us Strangers. This is a new film by a director called Andrew Haigh, starring...
I didn't know he was a new director. Is this
I
his first
said
film?
it's a new film.
Oh,
Yeah, no, new film.
I was going to say new film.
He directed.
Okay.
He's directed films like Weekend. He directed 45 Years, which I believe was that the film with Charlotte Rampling. Was it Tom Courtenay? A sort of black and white love. I might be imagining. Anyway, this isn't his first film. This is a film by Andrew Haigh. It's based on the book Strangers by Japanese author Taichi Yamada, which makes me want to read it. Taichi Yamada's book is a heterosexual. Has heterosexual characters in it, but this is that story reparked within the life of a gay character played by Andrew Scott. It also stars Paul Mescal, and in there too are Claire Foy and Jamie Bell. Also, Andrew Scott, Fleabag, most people know him for. He was also in...
Played the vicar.
Played the priest or vicar. He was also in Sherlock, which I was not a big fan of, the Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman. Nanny Dice says that he was absolutely sensational. That he was getting absolute plaudits. I was trying to get him to work on a project that I'm doing at the moment, where he did a one-man Vanya, Chekhov play, and I saw a sort of preview of it at the cinema, and rarely does theatre carry to the two. He did. You've got to see him on stage. He's something else, he really is. And I've seen him a couple of times at the National in the cafe. He's tiny.
Well, we saw him on the red carpet.
He's tiny.
We could have taken him home with us under our arm.
As was Claire Foy. As was, in a way, Paul Mescal. All tiny. Anyway.
They always are.
It's funny, isn't it?
They always are.
Funny.
It's so funny.
So what's the concept behind this film? Okay, let me see if I can get it pithily.
Oh, blimey.
I'll try. So Andrew Scott is a scriptwriter, screenwriter. He lives alone. He's on his own. It's quite a dreamy, magical concept, as in, he lives in a flat. It's quite sort of, there's not many people. There's no sense of him living in an ordinary sort of community. It's a sort of high-rise flat. And he's writing. We could assume maybe he's having writers, or whatever. Anyway, and he accesses and he re-meets essentially what you could either call the ghosts or the imaginings of his parents back in the 80s. So almost a bit of a time travel.
The ghosts of the imaginings.
Yeah. And alongside that, that's the sort of central narrative thrusting through the film, is a sort of a go back in time or a revisit of the memories and, as I say, ghosts of his parents who tragically died in an accident when he was 12. And alongside that, we have this curious narrative of a neighbour of his in the block that he's in, sort of like in which there is no one else, of Paul Mescal, who knocks on his door very drunk, and a romance blossoms between him and Paul Mescal.
Very pithily put. But I can entirely disagree with your description of where he's living. Because I didn't see it mystical or magical at all at the beginning.
I saw it as isolated, lonely and dystopian.
Well, yes, but not magical.
No.
Yes.
When I say magical, I mean magic realism, as in, it didn't feel like it was in a real part of London because it felt devoid of life.
Right, okay, so no, that felt so like London. It just felt like very urban, big block where there could be 1,000 people in there. You may meet them or you may not, kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But this view that you couldn't make out. So I was just I remember at the beginning of it, trying to get my footing on his economic status.
Right.
I was like, what is he? How much money has he got?
Right.
What's the situation? Because I was a bit thrown by...
But don't you think that's because it was quite non-specific in a way? Right?
No, but it's interesting that you would see that as magical. I'm not saying that you're wrong or I'm right. It's just totally...
Yeah, so maybe magical isn't the right word. What I meant by magical was that the whole film is a sort of magic realist kind of thing.
See, I didn't know that at the beginning. So I had no... I love... Mark likes to know a bit. Well, I'm very lucky that you find the films and we go and see them, but I love to know nothing at all.
Yes.
So it's very good. I have a terrible memory, so I never remember the trailers we've reviewed. So I didn't know what I was going in to see at all.
And this is a film, believe me guys, this is a film that, well, before seeing it, I would have said, this is a really difficult conceit to get on board with. Essentially what happens in this film. Because we talked about it on the Weekly Rushes when it was coming up, and I read the blurb and I went through it and I thought, that can either really work or it's really not going to work. There was a moment where he goes back to his house of his youth, Andrew Scott in the film.
You're going to shame me now.
Yeah, I'm going to, because it was sweet. And you
I leaned over to him
and you said,
boy, his mum.
yeah.
He's too old.
I think you thought they were trying to sort of sell to us that somewhere in Croydon was still stuck in the 80s with Jamie Bell with a tash like that.
Well, no, I hadn't seen Jamie Bell at that point.
Right,
I'd only seen Claire, so I was like, what's happening here? I was disorientated for a lot of the beginning of the film, which I liked. You're either somebody that you like a spoiler because you're watching a review about a spoiler. That's a spoiler review, but or you don't, and I don't. I like to just keep getting my footing and think, what the hell's going on here? So, yeah, because initially I thought, we are going back to see his mum and dad, but we were not.
Well, no, we were what this film asks you to do really early on, which this is my first moment of falling in love with this film, was you are, as any viewer now, we're really, really forced, I think, with almost everything we watch to understand, to be orientated,
yes.
to have it spelt out, to be signposted, where even if it's kind of adventurous and experimental, to even be signposted emotionally.
Yeah.
And I thought what was absolutely wonderful about this film was it, not in an aggressive way, in a really gentle, intense, emotionally pure way, it said to you, let go of trying to make sense of this completely.
Make the story, straight away with Jamie Bell, it was a cottaging situation. They were on the
Jamie Bell?
Yeah.
Oh, I see, when he went back in...
he's going to go and have sex with this man.
Yeah, just to clarify, hang on, that sounds really odd, because Jamie Bell plays his father. Okay, yeah, because the second thing that Nadia leant over and said to me that's cottaging. You were funny at those 2 points.
No, because I thought, I know what's happening here. He's going to have sex with him in the woods.
Wow, that's a really interesting scene.
And then that stayed with me throughout, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so what essentially happens, at its bluntest, he does kind of travel back in time, and he kind of does travel to the...
play with your mind, yeah. Because the Jamie Bell... That initial meeting when
but I just want to clarify, so he's kind of travelled back in time to a time in Croydon to his house. What's a really nice detail about this film, and I really love this, and in fact we did this in the documentary we did years ago with Nigel Slater, where we took him back to his actual home, and it's a very intense thing going to the home of you did it in Vlogmas a couple of years ago. This was shot in Andrew Haigh's home from his youth, the director's home. That was his
He's from Croydon.
That house that they were shooting in was his, which gives me goosebumps.
Is he from Croydon?
I don't know if he's from Croydon, but he was shooting that. So where he was shooting his kind of, the domestic scenes of his childhood, that was his home. Wow. The director's home, which I just think
the director who I'm now obsessed with.
Which I just think adds another layer to it. Also, so why are we talking about cottaging and Jamie Bell in a forest? It seems a bit random. So what's happened is he's essentially gone back in time, and what we discover, and it's the rhythm of the film, is that across the film, Andrew Scott keeps going back to his parents. He's going back to his parents who are dead. So what are they? Ghosts? Imaginings? Is it because he's got writer's block? He does write on his script, suburban street exterior. Is this part of the inspiration for whatever he's trying to write? All that kind of stuff. And I think it forces you to, you are striving to kind of go, well, how much of this should I believe? And then you begin to realise he's having conversations with them that essentially he never could have had because he's older and he's gay. And that's the big thing about this story, isn't it? It's about being a gay man and essentially about a gay man going back in time. And I think this really resonated. And I was surprised to see this mum, but not surprised, but I was pleased that this touched my mum because she said she really related to it as a young woman confused about her sexuality, not able to talk to her own parents. Even when I was a child, I was not allowed to talk about my mum's sexuality to Nan and Dad.
It isn't just theatre and film and everything just so brilliant though, and art. It's like every single person takes such a different thing from each moment because I, am not gay. I have a great relationship with my parents, but I love you and you have so much grief in you for a lost father, for not having a father. So I was watching it through those eyes. So for me, it was about the lack of communication that so many people have with their parents. And it was incredible, like each moment, and you could feel, right from the beginning, you could feel like the emotion in the audience from people, couldn't you? I haven't been in the cinema for a very long time, since I've heard so many people crying. But each time I felt it was something that was really going to touch you from a son to father position. I looked over and there you were, wiping away a tear, dropping your head. It was going so deep into you, and it was so weird though I was feeling what it was. So it was just, it just, it spoke to me on loads of different levels as well. With the relationship with the mum, you know,
Absolutely.
70s, 80s mum. My mum is the most fantastic mum. I always felt loved by my mum. But there was a very much, you know, get on with stuff, and we didn't navel gaze and we didn't any of that. So I was feeling that as well. It was just it was beautiful in showing us as the kind of parents we are now, where everything is discussed and everything is open and everything is possible and everything is accepted, and we're walking all over ourselves to understand everything. And it was like, so even on that, from to a mum of, you know, teenage girls, I was like, fuck, we've come a long way. We should pat ourselves on the back.
Well, and I do think it's a film about that. I think it is a film. I think
so
it's quite a timeless film, and I think I've had an epiphany, and this is something that I'm talking about in the No Name Sunday show this weekend about the book that I've reviewed, which I just want to give a little plug here, The Late Americans. I've been embedded in male gay culture for the last 10 days. I mean, not just embedded, but in bed with as well. I mean, no, in a big way, and it's really. What I found really rewarding about the whole sort of embeddedness of all of this is the universality of it and the specifics of the experience. So of course there's the specific. This film engages with the specifics of not being able to come out in the 80s. How actually, and it reminded me, because I made a film at film college about coming out on my mum's behalf, it reminded me of just how much shame we felt as a family and as a unit. I don't want to get emotional. As a unit.
It's okay.
No. In the 80s, and how difficult that was, obviously, for my mum and lots of other people that we knew, because she knew lots of gay people, but also how much bullying and how much, you know, so the 80s...
It was brilliant on bullying. The film was brilliant
really good on bullying.
And the bullying that we do without even knowing that we're doing it, when you know, he talks beautifully, simply, it's very sushi, the bullying, when he talks about the bullying at school, and then when the father admits that he too was a bully. It was just.
Well, he said you were the kind of boy that I would have bullied at school too. So
I get it.
Yeah,
Jamie
Bell is sensational.
Oh my god!
I mean, they all are, but I mean,
he blows your mind. Actually, because we were at a gala screening, Andrew Haigh, the director, noted him because he wasn't there. He was the only one that wasn't there, and he said, you know, the father to us all, which is, and I was disorientated again for him. It was such Jamie Bell, what from the dancing film?
Yeah.
But my God, he is a sensational actor.
So it dealt with a young boy unable, you know, and confused, and going through all the confusions that everyone goes through about their sexuality and identity. Let's think of this sort of, you know, trans-tolerant modern day that we're in a very different time now. Even than the 80s.
We forget such a short time ago.
Yeah, absolutely, such a short time ago. And so what this film posits is the possibility of him being able to connect, share with, talk about and open up about all the stuff, not only that he couldn't do then, but they're also getting an update on his life, which does lead you to so many universal, forgetting homosexual or heterosexual or trans or whatever, thoughts about all those relatives and people that have been instrumental in your life, parental figures, that you would want to reach out to and have that connection with and clarify about things or explain things to. So clever.
So deep.
But as you rightly said, for me, the bit was not having a father and how you can have a father, and I felt in that moment where they hugged each other and I was in pieces, how you can have a father and not have a father at the same time.
That's what I would say. I don't know, sometimes it's better to not have one than have a bad one.
But then even in not having a father, you have a father. But it's it's a very interesting film. And then so you've got all of that going on, and you've got this terrible sense that there's only a finite amount of time
When are they going to disappear in a puff of smoke, or maybe they're going to stay forever? It gives you the hope.
Well, the moment where he returns at Christmas and he's in his pajamas.
Now, a note on that. To pull that off, the director and actor to pull that off,
astonishing,
was incredible, because that could have been so borderline egg.
It could have been so borderline egg, but what it did...
The truth in it allowed us to just go
it was totally... I mean, obviously it was the filmmaking script.
A moment of laughter in that.
I was going to say, but I think Andrew Scott let that in, that moment in his performance, where when he walked in, he owned the silliness of the situation. He just acknowledged Andrew Scott, the fact that he hasn't been nominated... I mean, I know Oscars don't mean that much.
But they do.
But they do. This is one of the most layered, nuanced, deeply intense performances I think I've ever seen.
Well, and I think equally for Andrew Haigh as well, because
the director,
absolutely, because the layers in the writing and the thought and I hope they watch reviews like this, because us having such different childhoods, the layers of emotions that he took us to is pure art. How that can just be overlooked by the Oscars shows us again that it's not really about the art.
Totally agree. I mean,
you can't miss this.
And also,
you can't miss on what they're doing there in this film.
No,
so.
and so what they're all doing so many really complicated things. So Andrew Scott's essentially going, he's reverting to childhood, but in an gay adult man's body. He's accessing the connection, the warmth, and what he needed. Now, I'm in therapy and I'm doing something. We're going to get to Paul Mescal. I know he's the curious elephant in the room at the moment, but that's a sort of, it's something that's a fascinating narrative running alongside it. But
this is so polymath, this film.
Oh, it's so clever. It's so clever. It's like a diamond with so many different sort of facets to it.
A diamond Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, a diamond Rubik's Cube.
An emotional diamond Rubik's Cube.
Oh, let's get even better by the minute. Oh, diamond Rubik's Cube. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? It's something I've been in therapy doing, and I don't want to get too therapy speak about this, but there's something that they do in some types of therapy called image rescripting.
And he whispered this to me in the cinema. He went, image rescripting.
Image rescripting is where you go back to moments, I've been doing a lot of this, where you go back to moments of trauma or upset, or not just upset, but moments in your childhood or in your life in the past. It's what they use for people struggling with PTSD. You go back to that scenario and you relive it in macro detail. But as you relive it with the guide and help of a therapist, you are also reliving it through the perspective of trying to understand what you needed to be able to sort of to get through that experience without
and
trauma.
To thrive rather than just survive.
What sort of emotional support did you need? What safety did you need to feel? What did you need to feel you need to be able to say without fear of consequence and all that kind of stuff? And in a sense, it allows you, I mean, one of mine required Harrison Ford coming in, because it also is parked in what can you realistically have. And I think what this was about was not a traumatic moment, but the trauma that clearly so many gay people go through of having to essentially deny who they are for a profoundly long period of time. And that might not be an acute hit or bit, although part of it will be bullying and violence and all that kind of stuff. And I thought this was a really interesting and intimate portrait of someone going back to look at what he needed from his parents and what he needed to say to them.
And it doesn't exclude those that aren't gay.
Precisely.
Because this would touch anybody that wanted a deeper connection and communication with their family, where they didn't, I mean, so many people don't, have to drag themselves to visit their parents because they can't, because they have to be something that is totally fake.
Absolutely
to
agree.
feel that their parents can be proud of them, can even look at them. So it speaks to everybody. That's why it's so bloody clever.
It's so clever, and I think going back to what you were just saying about it shows you how far we've come. On one level, it does. I do sometimes worry that we live in a generation now where we hide behind the myth of openness and sharing of everything.
Yes.
But that there's another layer. And
I can't say that.
Yeah. And
I think boys have got all the language, but deep beneath it's scary as fuck.
And also, I think there's an ability to feel like you can hear everything and encourage your kids to say everything, but actually, you can never remove everyone's desire for privacy or an inability to open up. So I think we've got a whole other heap of this coming.
Because also, like as a parent, because I was watching it as a parent as well, and thinking about that sort of stuff. We would like to pat ourselves on the back and say, we're just so open and we're so. But how often are we judging? How often, when they tell us something somebody said to them, does a part of us go, I think that too? It's so, it's. I think if you're really, really interested in what makes human beings tick and what makes our relationships good, bad, and everything in between, for me, it's made me. I've kept thinking about so many different relationships I have, and my communication, and how we fake it to make it. As good communicators, you can fake it to make it. But they were just so obvious, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And easier.
And so just a final sort of reference on the complication of what Claire Foy and Jamie Bell are doing. It's very complicated. They are responding in 80s characters from the 80s as the parents of this child. They are responding to a lifestyle and news that they're being given from now, and they have to respond to it as if they're still from that era and stay true to what they would have been. And yet the film offers Andrew Scott a tenderness and compassion from them.
But also looking into a grown man's face.
Exactly.
It's mind-blowing.
Okay, so let's talk about Paul Mescal.
And Claire Foy at the end of the gala screening, when they got up, she was crying, wasn't she? They were all crying.
We were all crying. There was a great big hugging.
It was a great night.
Let's talk about Paul Mescal. So I'm kind of pleased that we've talked it this way around, because obviously a lot of the press and publicity around this highlights Paul, and he's a huge flavour of the month, he's a huge heartthrob, all this kind of stuff, and he's a sensational actor. And I felt a bit for Andrew Scott, because of course that can sometimes eclipse, because this is Andrew Scott's film. This is a sensational bravura piece of sensitive, underplayed acting.
And when it was introduced by Edith Bowman on stage, I was like, because she said this is a mesmerising Andrew Scott, and she only spoke about Andrew Scott, and I didn't really know what the situation was. Like, oh, this is a bit weird. She hasn't mentioned Paul Mescal, but then I mean, they are all so equal in it, but you get it, don't you? When you watch the film, bloody hell, it's tour de force from him.
So Paul Mescal knocks on the door. He's a neighbour, or you think he's a neighbour. He's drunk, and a sort of curious relationship develops between them. And I think this is a part of the film where you can take from the film what you choose to take from the film with this part of the story. Is he imagined? Do they have a relationship? Is the relationship real? Is the relationship an idealised relationship that I chose for most of the film to think was Andrew Scott's written? You know, I thought so much of the film could be seen as what he was writing or what he was fictionally thinking about. And was there an idealism to what we then see happen between him and Paul Mescal? And was that intimacy real, or was it imagined, or was it desired, or did it just not happen at all? But Paul Mescal, I thought, played loneliness beautifully. I felt huge loneliness even when they were together. I felt this was also about the loneliness of being gay and being a modern person in a city. And that's why I felt it's such an unpopulated city, even though they were in clubs, even though the kind of intimacy in the clubs was one that kind of didn't get them close to each other. There was a kind of, I don't know, you know, it felt sort of impersonal, and yet between them it was incredibly personal. And all I felt throughout it was Andrew Scott's incoming loneliness, and because it was all imagined, and I felt Paul Mescal's utter loneliness because he was an addict.
Okay, so I'm totally different from me. So in his first appearance, you think, oh my God, he's a hopeless alcoholic. And in my memory, in the trailer, he was married. I thought they'd all had dinner with each other. I'm sure I'd seen a scene where he was having dinner with his wife. I probably got my trailers. So I thought, oh, blimey, his wife's upstairs and he's just come down for a quick one. That's what I was thinking.
Okay, completely different film.
Yeah, so I thought, oh God, he's got blind drunk. She's away for the weekend and he's going to come down and have his first homosexual experience. First few minutes. And then it was like he was so overtly sexual, and then I thought, oh my God, he's really, really dangerous. He's going to come in and kill him. So this is in the first few minutes. We go to so many, going back to the way that we want to always be ahead of the game. It's like sit with the story.
Yeah.
So then when they do get together, I didn't feel any loneliness from him through the. I thought the sex scenes were beautiful. I don't really like sex scenes, heterosexual or homosexual. I don't really like to watch other people having sex, sue me. But I thought they were beautiful.
Very tender.
And I thought they were really sexy, and I thought they were so authentic. It was so authentic in its intimacy that I 100% thought the whole thing was real. Now, this isn't a spoiler because maybe it is, maybe it's not. But when you turned to me and said, when they were further into their affair, and you said, of course, it's not real. And I went, yeah, no, I know. I was lying.
Oh, no, I
was lying.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
No, I wasn't saying, of course. I mean, it was for me, I thought, I don't feel this is real. I mean,
no, but you said it sadly, like I would know.
Oh, I see what you mean. I wasn't saying, like, this is what it is.
No, you said, oh, and it's imagined. And I was like, yeah, I know.
No, it's real.
I thought I didn't know that.
Right.
Just like when all the way through they're talking about Croydon, I could not believe that the film was made in Croydon. We live in Croydon. I'm a Croydonite. I've got a show called Kelly Cooks Croydon. And then when I was actually in the Wycliffe Centre, I went, oh God, we really are in Croydon. I was watching this with our wide-eyed innocence of a child. But anyway, so then through the relationship, I didn't see loneliness in the club. I envied so much of this relationship because it was the perfect relationship. And what I loved about it was, and I said to you afterwards, and I wish we could see more relationships like that in the movies, on telly, of two gay men having an incredible relationship. Yes, have a sad ending at the end, but too often we don't really see that real love and that real sharing and caring and putting him to bed, and like it was so intimate. And I remember at one point thinking, everybody wants this kind of relationship. Why aren't people just nicer to each other? Why don't they just trust each other? Because Paul Mescal character is egging Andrew Scott's character to trust and to go with it. And then it became this beautiful, caring relationship. And I loved it.
Isn't that fascinating? This is what I love.
I was so lost in it. When they go to the club and it's all exciting and they do dress
together in the bathroom. For him.
No, but that's later on.
No, I get exactly what you're saying, but this is what I love. People often think if you disagree about a film, then you're just disagreeing and it's not pleasant.
No, it's what differences you get from it.
No, but I think some people forget that you can get from films like, we accept with books that people get different things. You see it differently, you imagine them differently, you focus and emphasise or bits stick out that are different in a huge thing of words, don't they? So, And I love it when a film, because so many films are so prescriptive and they're, you know, it's dot to dot and it's painted by numbers and you're told where to go, you're made what to feel and all this bollocks. What I loved about this film was I got completely the opposite from it. I saw how beautiful it was, of course, because it is beautiful. There are moments of beauty in their relationship. And you're right, for anyone who's gay, to see that represented for a gay couple is just wonderful. The sex was explicit but beautiful and intimate and tender.
But I don't think it's just for gay people. I think for anyone,
No,
you look at that and you go,
no, I agree, but that was my point.
Caring for each other.
That's my point. It was such an idealised moment. Even when I put a sheet on you the other night, and I thought, oh God, I feel like Paul Mescal in there. But it was so idealised that I thought
woke me up.
It was all threaded through massively with loss. That this was an ideal. That this lonely man at his computer, going back in time, who's feeling the grief of his lost his parents, wants to have these imagined conversations. Perhaps he is having these conversations in the fiction of this world. Maybe it's not time travel and an idealised thinking. Maybe this is real. Maybe this is kind of cosmic. And I do think that the final shot of the film lends itself to a cosmic reading of this film, which I think is rather beautiful. But I just felt it was all shrouded in loss. And if only, and I felt this was a really, really painful portrait of loneliness, even in love. And I think that the romance in this film for me, which is, I think, a really beautiful touch, which could have, as you rightly say, nudged towards egginess, was the way in which it moved out to like a supernova light as the camera pulled out and pulled out and pulled out. Though there's a tragic moment towards the end of the film, there's this moment also right at the end where it is romantic and it is saying we are energy, we are love, we are all these kind of things. It sounds a bit gloopy and ridiculous.
It's not.
But it's not. It really isn't. It really isn't. And so I did feel Andrew Scott gave me so much learning. So I related to this in so many different ways, that you can be in love, you can be in a relationship, but everything about yourself is holding you back and holding you alone, and you can't accept it and you can't keep it.
And the great line, he said, I was too frightened.
Oh.
That was a great line in that last moment. Because people are too frightened to take the risk to be vulnerable with somebody, and then just frightened of being hurt, and then you just never taste the riches if you're like that.
This is a beautiful film.
Beautiful.
It is a really beautiful film, which isn't sentimental in the wrong ways. It may require, I do like to give a little bit of handlebars, like with Poor Things. I've seen 2 films this year that I think are 2 of the best films I've seen in a long time, Poor Things and this. But I think accept and be mindful, engage in mindfulness at the front of this film, and you will get into, it's asking you to kind of make some leapfroggy moves. You know, are they real? Just go with it. Just go with it. Don't challenge it. Just let it take you, because it will take you to so many reservoirs of emotional truth and relatability. And for me, it was 100 out of 100. I know you don't score, but it's
I don't do numbers because I don't like to, because you can do one number for one film and then another film. But for me, what I will say is, I have not one single thing that I would want to change or criticise in any way.
That, babe, that's 100. That's 100. I know, we're getting a bit sort of...
And you're right, the thing is, with films, when people think, the thing to do is when somebody thinks differently about a film, is go, oh really? Oh what? Oh.
So agree.
Oh my God.
Don't close other people down.
Because what you're doing is like, it's an onion, and there could be so many more layers to
organic.
It. Like, you coming, just this conversation, it's like, oh God, I hadn't thought of that. Oh,
Yeah, well, likewise with you. And this is the joy of it. So like, even with something like Saltburn, where I had a strong response, and you watch something again and you listen to other people, remember, it's not about, we're encouraged to just be anti or pro and sit on 2 opposite sides. It's organic. This film
is it a gay film? Is it a this film?
Well,
it's a human film.
Check out Anna Named Sunday Show. It all comes up again in this.
And that is true, what's the word?
Art.
Yeah, there you go.
Fabulous film. And you could tell, when they say a happy crew makes not a happy film, because it might be a sad film about sadness, but a happy crew makes a good product. Yeah. You could see the intimacy that this cast and crew
and we were on the red carpet, and we literally, I could smell Claire Foy's perfume, and you could see this relationship between them, and then with Andrew Haigh, who just was funny and he would be my new dinner party guest.
The director.
Stupid fucking question.
Andrew Haigh.
Whenever you do an interview, he'd be your dinner party guest, and I'll stand there and go, oh God, he'd be on that list.
I hate to say it, I've got a big man crush on Andrew Scott. I want him to sit at the head of our table and just look at me with those chestnut brown eyes.